partner in crime, Mr. Robert Lee Davis. How is weather in Brooklyn right now, Rob?
It's nice. It's supposed to be windy,
Yeah.
but it's good right now.
Well, right on, man. Well, so spring is sprung, right? I mean, we're kind of officially there,
Yes,
and
for it.
and so yeah, and I'm not sure how big the delay is, but for some reason I'm not seeing our screen up there on the live, which is really well. Let's see what happens there in a second. Sure.
That you handle the technical
I know.
difficulties.
I think. And right now people just get to see that. That's just interesting. Well, let's see. We'll see on Facebook and see if we'll just might be funky. And so yeah, we're live, and I'm seeing we just went live on Facebook there, and it's still showing this blue screen for some reason, which is just special.
It's always something special, right?
There we
Technology.
go. We're on. We're live. Okay, so we're just delayed on our end. So there we are. So oh no, that was last week's. What is happening? What is going on? Why are we not showing up?
I think I'm saying that there was a pause of some kind.
Oh, there it is. There's the pause. It says we're live. And yeah, it says we're live, but we're not seeing a picture, which is really odd for people. So we might be, and I'm going to keep talking. Live video interrupted.
Yeah,
this is always.
why not? I'm staring outside at the.
Are you?
Cloud, trying to do something.
Excellent. Well, we're having a weird technical issue, people. And everything, it's always, you gotta love live streaming. Everything works smoothly. You come in there, and then all of a sudden everything goes weird. So at the moment, it says our broadcast is paused. I haven't even done anything to pause our broadcast. Yeah. Okay, we might be back in just a moment. We have some technical issues, so we're gonna get it fixed. And we'll be all right. We'll make this fixed. I know why it's paused. All right. We're going to close this off. Give me 1 second. There we are. We're on. People can see us. Not that they cared, I guess, but, well, they can now. And we'll be popping up on Facebook in just a minute. So, how was your week, Rob?
My week has been relatively good. You know,
Yeah.
I was telling you that I have allergies. I have very bad seasonal allergies, so they seem to go all year now. And the pollen attacked me 2 days ago. It was not pretty.
I've had allergies in the past. This is actually kind of funny. So, my wife and I, Jackie, at one point we had 6 cats. And
which is crazy.
Which is crazy, I get it, but you know what? We were very proud. You walked into our house and you couldn't smell cat or anything. And it was one of those things, people come into our house and they're like, oh, look, you got a cat. And then they sit down on our couch and be like, oh, there's another cat. And then another one, and all of a sudden they're like, where are all these cats coming from, people? You know, and so it's kind of fun that we had those. Now, over the years, they've passed away because Jack and I have been together, and, you know, our oldest cats, like, they lived to 17. And what was funny about this is we started with 1 and 2, and after a while, I started showing allergies, and I was like, oh, there's seasonal allergies. I'm not allergic to cats. I'm totally fine. I'm not allergic to cats. My allergies kept getting worse and worse every year. And then as the cats started passing away, my allergies started getting better. Still was like, hey, my allergies have changed. I'm not even connecting the cats right now, which is insane. And I knew if I rubbed my eyes from a cat, then it would bother me. But I was like, it's everybody, right?
Right.
You know, and then the final cat passed away, and like I was like, you know, I don't have any allergies. And I was like, visited a friend who had a cat, and my allergies flared up, and I was like, holy shit, I'm allergic to cats. And I had 6 of them. And so now it's this point of contention in our household that Jackie's like, I can't believe you've been allergic to all those cats. I want cats, damn it. I'm like, we can't have any more cats, honey. I'm sorry. And
I'm not a cat person. I'm allergic to them.
they love them.
I don't enjoy their personalities.
You don't like their personalities?
I'm a dog person. I would like a pet that is happy to see you, not one that chooses, right?
Yeah, just like.
I have a cousin who lives in Brooklyn, and I go to her house, and her cat, whose name is Squirrel, shows up when squirrel decides to show up.
Gotcha.
And it could be I could be there for 2 hours, and then suddenly squirrel like wants to make an appearance. So
2 hours and yeah, squirrel don't care, right? I get it. Cats don't care. That's the thing about cats. It's actually kind of one of the fun things about cats, in my opinion, really, is how little they care about anything you're doing except for when you open a can of food. And then they want to bother you until no end.
They're like arrogant housemates who pay no utilities, nothing. They're just
That's
there.
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Hold on a second.
So
I'm trying to get our chat room up for people here, but it's for some reason
okay.
freezing on me again. I don't know why I'm having internet issues today.
It's Facebook. They're watching us. They don't like us anymore. YouTube doesn't trust us.
And of course, our audio for some reason is playing, and I don't want it to play. There it is. And it's not even letting me. God, what is wrong with Facebook today? Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit cannabis stuff today while I'm actually getting this technical thing figured out here.
Sure.
There's the
well, I will say that in regards to, here in New York, the ability for people to utilize their cannabis, their weed, their marijuana, their pot,
their ganja,
what have you, more freely. You can smell it in the street, right?
You smelling the wacky tobacco?
And I love it.
Here's the thing. I used to smell cannabis when I lived in New York too. But you had to be, here's what's messed up. You had to be in either a section that police weren't going to at all, or if you were in a section of police where you had to be white. And that's true. It's just the truth, right? And that sucked. And this is in 95, 96, right? And I remember walking with my roommate at the time, Richard Cashton, who first man I ever smoked a joint with. So, he can go down in cannabis history. Yeah, him and Ryan White. Just got Ryan in trouble for the military.
Look at you. Yeah. Look at you putting out personal information.
I know, right? I was college and we smoked weed. What the hell? Get over it, everybody. Anyway, he was the first person I ever smoked with. But he was my roommate in New York when I moved there. He'd already been there a year. And we're walking down the street and just hands me a joint. And of course, this is my first time like, dude, we're on a public street. And he's like, yeah, go ahead. Smoke a joint. And then we started walking by some cops and I'm like, holy shit. And he's like, don't worry, just keep walking. And they just sniffed and they moved on. That's white privilege right there. That's white privilege right there. When the cop in New York is like, we don't know, okay, two white dudes smoking weed, okay, who cares? And we literally walked right by them.
Yeah.
I mean, like right by them. And so, I've always kind of had a little bit more of a brazen ability to just consume in public because of Richard Cashton, basically. And it's funny because I would even go to states that had just legalized back in early legalization days, and I'd be like, oh, just pull it out outside of a place and start smoking. They're like, what are you doing? And these are all cannabis people. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, what? I'm just having a quick puff here. And, you can't do that. Right. And I says, okay, all right. I'm just not used to that right now. I'm like, I'm a little too open and free here in Colorado, I guess. But yeah, that's totally a white privilege thing. It is or it was. Now it's New York privilege.
It's interesting to see that we're still struggling for full legalization across the country for a thing that is bad based on who's using it, right? Because have all these stories about black communities and poor communities, and they're abusing their weed or whatever, and it's it's detrimental. Yet all I ever heard when I grew up was the the 60s and the Summer of Love, and people were out smoking and enjoying themselves. So if it was white people in the story smoking pot, and it's also language, right?
It's language.
Pot was acceptable, right? Weed, dope. I really hate when it's called dope.
Actually, I hate when it's called dope.
Dope is heroin.
I agree. And also, there's also even the connotation of dope meaning like stupid, right? And so, and I get it, we're like, hey, man, that is dope. When somebody, that phrase became a thing, just like when someone said, that's bad, they meant that's good. And I get that slang and the lexicon can kind of change that around. But to me, dope is still like dopey and dope, and it makes you stupid. And I don't agree with that. And, I think that there's, maybe I'm biased. It does make me stupid. But
makes me creative.
It does. And, it depends on the weed, by the way, for me. Like, I know, like, if I'm like for me personally, if I want to have a super creative session, Blue Dream, one of my favorite buds to smoke, my strains to smoke, and it's a overly grown strain now. It's super popular, or was for a long time, and they be kind of overdone. But I mean, like a pure Blue Dream is like just gets creative juices flowing for me. It always does. And so that was one of the things early days in the company when we had other partners and like, we need to come up with a concept for this. Dave, you need to go smoke some Blue Dream. And I literally, it was like a thing. And they're like, Dave, go smoke. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'll go smoke some Blue Dream. And then like you'd start writing on a whiteboard, and all of a sudden shit would just kind of pour out of me, and so that was it definitely creates.
Where the names come from.
What's that?
I always wonder where the names like.
Oh. I mean, some of the names. I mean, the growers are naming it usually, right? And so they're coming up with these names just purely out of their butts half the time. But sometimes what you're seeing is you're seeing a cross of two different strains that become something else, and so so that you'll hear it in the strain a lot of times, so you have all these Kush brands, and they'll like they'll be like, oh, well, is this one in this Kush? And then we mix it together. So they'll be like Bubba Kush, which, by the way, is a real person. He's a great guy. And
Bubba Kush is a real person?
Oh, Bubba Kush is a real person. He used to write for us, actually.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, he's got some great stories. So if you guys want to check out hcmagazine.com. You can go back to way on our archives, and you can find some stuff from Bubba Kush. His name is actually Matt Berger. And he talks about some of his old the black market days, and how OGs came about in the Kushes came about, and they started in Florida, and then how we moved to California. And there's all these great stories. In fact, I just recently reconnected with Matt Bubba, and he's in Puerto Rico right now, and he's creating some great products under his name. And so I'm probably going to have him on a show very soon to pick his brain about the old days and what he's doing now. And he had a great grow here as well that didn't last because it ended up being out. They got zoned out. Like, when they started opening dispensaries in Colorado, people were just opening them up because there was no regulation. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, this is a little crazy, because we started having more dispensaries than Starbucks, which is true, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a strange thought to think about, that we had more dispensaries than Starbucks in Colorado. So what do we like more in Colorado? Coffee? Cannabis,
It's interesting you say that, because there's a piece of me that wonders, in our sort of capitalized corporate culture. And again, I don't have any issues with certain concepts of capitalism, right? Especially as an artist, right?
Yeah.
You create something and people purchase it, and you made that thing. That's your money, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
But I wonder at what point in the future now will quote unquote legit establishments start to also sell cannabis. Like, how long before Starbucks decides, oh, you know what, we could actually make more money if we just also start selling also?
It's a really interesting thought, honestly. Like, could Starbucks start opening up coffee shops in places that allow it? Like, the coffee shops are where you would smoke and consume in Amsterdam. So the fact that you're not consuming in a coffee shop right now is kind of a bummer, right? And most places don't allow public consumption. You're not seeing a lot of licensing. Now in Colorado, we finally have allowed for public consumption. But you have to get a license, and then and you can't do this and you can't do that, and it becomes very hard to make money, because right now, if you want to have a public place, you cannot sell cannabis there, right? But you also, if you want to be licensed to have consumption in the premises, you cannot sell cannabis, but you also can't sell alcohol. And so what are you going to do to make money? I mean, you could sell food, and everyone's like, you could sell food and you'll do really well there, but it's also like a private club setup where you buy it, and and so it's an interesting thing. It's like they're not doing it the way you could do it. In Amsterdam, people would go in, they go in the coffee shop, they'd buy their product, they'd smoke it, and then they get the hell out and go out for the rest of their day. Like, they're not going to hang there all day. Americans do when we go to Amsterdam. We'll just hang. He's like, well, look at us, and they're just like, dude, I'm ready to go out. This is just a place where I can consume, and then I'm going, and so
it'll make. I've never been to Amsterdam, but it will make the hype or whatever around it not so much of a big deal anymore once you can start to do it
Correct.
here more
I agree.
free.
And it's getting there. I mean, here the hype of cannabis is kind of gone. If you live in Colorado, you're not like, wow, cannabis is legal. You know, it's like, okay, we're already at year 7 that it's legal, which is crazy to think. We're at year 7 that recreational cannabis is legal. But there is a problem with recreational cannabis, and that is that it overshadows the medicinal benefits of cannabis. And that happened here, and that was something that a lot of us were concerned about. Like, for one thing, you have this double-edged sword. Like, I'm really excited that we're legal recreationally, and anybody over 21 can buy it, no problems, nothing, right? That's great, except for it happened at a point when we were just really getting like a nice downhill momentum for people understanding the medicinal benefits of cannabis. And as soon as it became recreational, it's like half of the population just forgot that there was that this is a medicine. And that's really kind of disturbing, right? I mean, it's like that's not what we're looking for here. We want people to understand the medicinal benefits. We want people to recognize that, you know, Phoenix Tears or Rick Simpson oil, whatever you want to call it, is something that has shown that it can cure some people's cancer. You know, and I'm going to say some people's, I'm not going to say all people's, and some types, not all types of cancer, but there's enough anecdotal evidence out there, and I've seen in enough people out there that they're like, yeah, I started taking this product and it killed my cancer. And it's usually the story is, I was in the 4th stage, this is to get your affairs in order because you're dying, make sure you get your will, all that stuff done. And then like, well, I had no other option, I'm going to try cannabis. And that's the other problem is cannabis is the final option. And it's like, you know, let's poison ourselves with chemo and radiation first, and then try this thing that's not nearly as harmful.
But that's you know, big pharma. They don't want, you know, we live in a global culture. It's not just about the United States.
Yeah.
There's plenty of natural. I mean, I'm not a total herbalist, right? I'm not really a big. I mean, apart from weed, I'm not really a big drug person, which is why I don't like injecting myself with, you know, many things, including the vaccine, as we've talked about.
Oh yeah, we'll have to continue that conversation too.
We will.
Yeah.
But we have a world of, historically, there were plenty of natural remedies that people utilize. Not that I don't believe there are not, you know, quote unquote, you know, medicinal laboratory created drugs that can have a benefit.
Absolutely.
As more things are anything that challenges the notion of the pharmaceutical industry making more money, of course they're going to push back on.
They are. And, you know, and it's funny because I've even heard some people make arguments for pharmaceutical companies that this full-on push for legalization hurts the pharmaceutical companies because if everybody has this product, then they're not going to develop new drugs from cannabis. And I think that's interesting because for me, every time I've seen evidence on prescription cannabis, and that means like there's stuff like Sativex or Marinol, which are made by pharmaceutical companies, is synthetic cannabis. Okay, what you find is that they have more side effects. They're not as effective. It doesn't do the same thing that natural cannabis products do.
Most things don't do the same thing as the most natural version of something does. If you can have the natural version, why not?
Exactly. Why not? And I think that's the problem is, and I love it when somebody's kind of like cry like problems for the pharmaceutical companies when everybody's like, yeah, that's one of the great things about cannabis is that it's not anti-pharmaceutical. It's just that it's adjacent to, in a sense. It's like you can try this first. You know, it's like I don't understand why we go straight to opioids for pain management. You know, I mean, prescribe 1,000 milligrams of THC, you know, or whatever you need. Try these things first. But that's the whole problem. It's like we don't pay attention. Doctors nowadays don't seem to pay attention to the adage of first do no harm, right?
Not enough, because the biggest drug dealers are pharmaceutical companies.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
Those are the people who are like, and now it's reaching a point, which is a whole separate conversation for a different time, but this notion now, there are many people who have been addicted to opioids, and now there's a national sort of concern for them, largely because it was greatly affecting white populations. That suddenly now there's concern.
Yep.
But previously, when other people were on drugs, they were bad people. The opioids are drugs, and they're being pushed by the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes, but it's
biggest drug dealers in the world.
But it's a substance abuse problem if you're a white person on opioids. And other than that, it's and then you need treatment. But yeah, so that's one of the biggest annoying things about the difference between cannabis and pharmaceuticals, right? Is the way it's being treated, and it's amazing. The other thing I want to talk about really quickly on the cannabis side, and then we'll obviously veer off into our traditional tangents on other topics, right? Last week was 420. We talked a little bit about it last week, but one thing we didn't get too deep into, I don't believe, was the statement that was made. Of course, on 420, it's like the time when every politician is asked about cannabis. It's what happens, right? And so Jennifer Psaki, the press secretary for Biden administration, was asked if a federally legalization bill came in front of Biden's desk, would he sign it or veto it? And she would not commit anything to it. Now I get it's her job, and my guess is she's probably asked that question. I mean, I can't think that this administration is a professional administration. Whether you like them or not, they're professional. So I guarantee you, they were like, well, today's 420, or next week is 420. What's our stance to talk about?
What do we say? Yeah.
And so when you get a statement like her that says, well, we're not going to commit one way or another, that is, I'm sorry, it's a bunch of bullshit. All right. You already know what the answer is going to be to that question, I think. And it's just that Biden is still playing the Biden's playing the 2008 game that politicians would play. I believe, and he said it now, I believe that it's up for the states' rights, which to me is pussy politics. I don't know what to say on that. It's a wimpy way to do this, right? It's like you're saying that I support the states legalizing it. Well, 36 states have now legalized medical marijuana.
Right.
And then the other statement he's made is, well, I believe we should just, if we reschedule it. He hasn't said deschedule. That's Chuck Schumer. Thank God for that. But he said we should reschedule to level 2, and then it won't be nearly as big of a problem, which is bullshit because there's huge problems for Schedule 2 substances. You can still go to jail for Schedule 2 substance too.
There's no reason for it to not. The problem is there's no reason for it to not be legal.
There's no reason for it to.
They don't have arguments anymore.
Yeah, but when you have these kind of arguments, to me, that's like Biden. I mean, and I get you're the president, you got a bunch of things. It's like I don't want to think about that crazy wacky tobacco. I bet he calls it wacky tobacco. I mean, if you say malarkey all the time, you're calling it wacky tobacco.
No, I think he probably refers to it as reefer.
Reefer? He might call it reefer. He might say grass. That's like an old one too. When I hear grass, I'm like, dude, you're a baby boomer already. You're instantly a baby boomer. Yeah. So this argument, like we're going to leave it up to the states. It's such a crappy argument. And if you say that you are there to fix racial injustice, this should be number 1 on your list.
Yeah.
Period. First, not just decriminalize, legalize it. All right. And then let the states decide their laws. That's where states' rights come in handy, right, Rob? Let the states decide how they want to regulate it within themselves, but tell everybody it's legal. And that's where states' rights come in. Not like, well, we're going to let this state legalize it, but this state can't, because you've screwed up interstate commerce, which could totally exist, right? And again, you're lightening up the police force's job.
And there's no. Well, yeah, you're lightening up the police force's job. You're going to have to let many of them go because you won't need that large of a force to go out and catch people.
Unless, right? Or you just put them on, stopping murders and theft. Strange idea.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. I think if we, you know, my words defund, your words
Reallocate.
reallocate, right? You will realize, yes, well, yes, are there murders? Are there homicides? Are there rape cases? All kinds of things to be investigated. But I think if once you take weed out of the picture, the number of police you will need will greatly decrease.
I think that's an interesting thought. I really do. I'm not I can't say, I don't have any stats that would say one way or the other there. Like if you look at Colorado, I don't think I've heard Abner. Abner's here. What's up, Abner? He said the pot. Yes, the pot. That's right. That's what he would call it. The pot. Are you smoking the pot? I know. Yeah. I love that. And to me, I'm sorry, when you say the pot, it does really feel like there's a pot.
Yes.
Like, you know, right?
Yeah. Great big, like, you know, are you stirring it or something?
But, you know, there's no evidence that I'm aware of. And now that you said that, I'm going to look into this. But
because you had people, I mean, I look at New York City alone, the number of, right? I'm someone who avoids police. I do everything in my power to not engage them, right? And I look at the number of unnecessary stops I've witnessed, you know, because someone was, you know, smoking weed walking down the street. And I'm like, or sitting in a park or whatever. I'm like, this is literally a waste of taxpayers' money. We don't need these people in these uniforms going after people for something that is literally, there is no connection to marijuana and like killings.
No.
And murder. Like,
no. They'll try to.
It's a drug that chills you out.
Yeah, they'll try to, and it's funny because even early on, like, I live in a small town, and there was, you know, a random domestic violence shooting here, right? And it was a horrible story. He killed his wife, and they tried to use the argument that he had cannabis in his system. The defense attorneys, okay, because they're going to look for any reason, like, oh, the cannabis, but it was also, but he also had alcohol in his system. And he also had, it's like, but they'll always, like, even during the legalization here, they'd be like, well, I mean, it was cannabis in and a lot of times the way they do statistics is if you're a DUI and you're drunk, but you have cannabis on your blood test, it's also because of the cannabis that you were drunk, that you were driving erratically. And it's like,
right.
Yeah, I mean, in like, I'm not out there saying go smoke weed and drive your car. I mean, like, you know, that's, right. I look at it like this. There's a thing that'll say, like, if you take, like, NyQuil has this on their thing, like, don't, you know, take this and you know, don't drive in a vehicle unless you know how it feels when you do that. That's kind of the state. Don't operate heavy machinery, right? Well, yeah, maybe don't operate heavy machinery on cannabis, and don't get into your vehicle unless you know how it affects you and how much you've consumed, right? Just like if I have one beer, I can drive home, right? You know, and it's the same kind of situation.
But like you said, I think the key is knowing your system. For some people, that one beer, you know, if you weigh 30 pounds, don't do it.
If you weigh 30 pounds, get to a hospital.
Yeah. You also have issues, yes.
Yeah, if you're an adult, get to a hospital. But no, you're right. I mean, it's like, it's coming down to, like, yeah, we can reasonably figure this out. And again, most people, if you're really high, and, you know, and anybody out there, please tell me otherwise if I'm wrong on your situation. But if you're really high, you're not like, time to get in my car, you know. You know,
yes.
There's a different thing. You have, you know, like, just like with alcohol, you have, like, you know, we call beer muscles, you know, whatever you want to say. Like, some people get aggressive, but you do tend to feel like you're a little more invincible, and the rules go out the window, right? Like, they just go out the window, which is, you know, like, if Jackie on the weekend, she might have, you know, a couple glasses of wine, and we're hanging out with our daughter, and I'm not, and, you know, and that's when she's like, yeah, sure, you can do that, to her daughter, when she absolutely shouldn't be staying up until midnight. She's like, sure, you can. I'm like, and I'm the one who's like, no, you can't. She just looks at me, like, I can't. Nope. But mom's not mom at the moment. Mom is, you know, drinking. And
you and Jackie need to do a show together.
Oh my God, that would be interesting. Actually, that would be interesting.
Parenting Chronicles.
The what?
The Parenting Chronicles.
The Parenting Chronicles. We are unusual parents, but we also have a pretty cool kid. But
yes, you do.
We probably allow her to do things that other people wouldn't. I think I've told you this. We give her a window at night when she can
Oh, right.
swear to us. And other people, and I know, I please give me comments on this. I don't care. And then you can meet my daughter and you'd be like, oh, she doesn't swear at all. So she's allowed to say some cuss words at night in the privacy of her home, and it's almost like you release the valve because she hears the words all the time, and then it's not a big deal. And she doesn't swear any other time. And if she does, she's like that. She knows if I ever catch you swearing during the daytime out with your friends, this rule's gone. And you know that you're
It's
not.
so interesting because that does not, black people, we are not a monolith, right? So I'm sure there are black people who would agree with that. I feel like there are, and within my circles, right, that's not happening in a black
I get it.
household, one. But two, it's funny because, I mean, I think, I know your daughter, I know the two of you, I think you're amazing people. For me, because I have spent a number of years working around kids and I see large numbers of lower elementary school children cursing, and it bothers me.
I get it.
Right. And I'm definitely not a Puritan by any standards at all. But I do believe, I'm very much a believer in protecting a certain kind of childhood space that's kind of vanishing. Like you shouldn't, I don't think, and I get what you're saying, this is inside of your house.
Yes.
But out in the world, I don't want to hear a 5-year-old telling someone else, fuck you.
No, and by the way, it's also like she's not allowed to say things like that, right?
Right.
She's not allowed to direct it. Like she can't be like, "What the fuck, mom?" Like if she does that, she is in serious trouble. And the other thing people don't realize is like this sounds like we're parents who are like just play with knives. We're actually very strict parents, in a lot of ways. Like I believe in my here's my one bit of advice for every new parent out there, okay? And it has absolutely held up true for us. And the phrase I'm going to tell you right now is the one you should always think of, in my opinion. And this is somebody who has absolutely no background in parenting skills besides being a parent, right? I mean, no background in like child psychology and all that kind of shit, right? Nip it in the bud. That's it. Remember that every single time you're dealing with your kid. Nip that shit in the bud. Your kid does one thing wrong, you nip it in the bud right there. I don't want to hear this. Well, she's only 3. So, when are you going to start parenting that kid? When she's 6, when she's 7? Because guess what? Your job gets harder and harder. The longer you wait to tell them what's right and wrong, the difference. Now, I know that's coming from the guy who just said he lets his daughter swear at night. But here's the other part is while I nip all that in the bud, so she knows also there are consequences if she does break the rules on swearing, right? And so she's very aware of that, and she knows. But so like as long as you're strict and then you allow little bits of leeway, but she knows that you're still going to be really strict on everything else, then it's almost like this pressure valve release, right? That kid does not swear in front of her friends. I mean, we've listened, we've kind of, none of them are swearing right now, which is great. She knows as she does, she's in serious trouble. And I also told her,
I'm sure she's also aware that's not going to fly around your parents.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't swear on anybody else. And it's funny, when we first allowed for this rule, because there was a word she wanted to say once, she said, "Can I just say it once?" And it was like, okay. She's like, shit, and she's all excited, and it was cute, right? But, we kind of looked at it and was like, okay, here's the thing. I look at it this way. If she's allowed to do it at home, it's not going to be this forbidden fruit. And that's the other thing is forbidden fruit is what is always going to get your kid every time, in my opinion. You can't do this, forbidden fruit, right? And so the fact that we allow a place for her to do and a space for her to do that makes it not so big of a deal. And I looked at this, like I grew up in an Italian family. And in an Italian family, wine is food, okay? It's not alcohol, it's food. They're like, I'm not drinking, I'm having wine. And it's like, that's kind of how we grew up. And so at like age 8, 9, I would get, and we'd do these little like glasses, not like wine glasses, because but it's an old school Italian way too. We had these little kind of juice glasses that we drink wine out, right? And my parents would give me a little bit of wine and they'd mix it with water if I wanted to try it. Here, try it. And it was terrible. Of course it was terrible. I didn't want to drink that, but they allowed me to drink it. And so it wasn't like, I can't wait till I get to drink wine. And so, and it's the same thing. It's not like she's like, I can't wait to get away from my parents so I can swear, because she can only swear around us. And so that's my argument for the whole swearing thing, everybody. Just so you all understand, that's where I'm at. And then, in fact, people will ask me about cannabis usage, and I think we should have a conversation about this at another time too. But my question, people ask, well, do you consume cannabis in front of your daughter? And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm not blowing smoke in her face, right? Like, I'm not. I mean, I'm like 10 feet away from her at the very least if I do consume it. And if she starts coming near, I'm like, hey, honey, back up for a little bit, or I'll walk away. But do I let her see me consume cannabis? And the answer is yes. But she calls it medicine because that's what I call it.
Yes, I can attest to it because I've been there when that has occurred.
Yes.
And we had generally walked away from her.
Yes. Yeah, well, that was when she was even younger. Now, I mean, she's 7, and so she can move around. And come towards us a lot more. And she'll even ask, she's like, are you going to have some medicine right now? I'm like, yes, I am, honey. And once in a blue moon, she's like, well, what is that for you? And I was like, well, it only helps adults right now unless you're a really sick kid, And I was like, and when you are 18, I am happy to consume cannabis with my daughter when you turn 18. But
I think I do not have a child yet, but I think, though I did not grow up in a home with, my parents did not smoke weed. My parents are not drinkers. I think I've seen them. My father never. I don't think so that I can remember. But every once in a while, like a glass of wine at a wedding or a champagne or something. So I didn't grow up around it. I had relatives who did, but it wasn't in my house. But I do think that when I have a child, that I would definitely want to have their first drink with them when they were legal to sort of destigmatize it, right? And that will be, who know when a kid of mine would be, 17, 18 years old in like the 2040 or something.
Right.
Weed, probably, right? And I even hate that I have a slight hesitance in it, and I feel like that's old school thought process.
It is an old school. No, that's a great point, though. We got to talk about that, Rob, because it is an old school process. Because, and the thing I'll say, because I've had parents ask me, even in our neighborhood, like, so you don't have a problem with your cannabis use in front of a problem? And while they're holding a beer in front of their kids.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, the thing you're holding kills over 80,000 people a year. The thing I'm holding, 0.
Right.
So let's realign our thinking here.
What's the more dangerous thing to be?
What's the more dangerous thing? Yeah. And yeah, you don't want your kid to get high off, you don't want to hot box your kid. And so don't be driving in a car and smoking weed with your kid in the car. Please, come on now.
Yes, that's not a good idea.
Not a good idea. But yeah, it's just something that I think we have to realign our thinking about that, and it was another one. It was another neighbor who had this conversation a few years back, and she was having a party in her backyard. And we were there, and I was like, so, and you still have to ask, right? Is it, do you mind if I, smoke up? She's like, well, I'd really rather you didn't. And I was like, oh, okay. She's like, yeah, our neighbors just moved here, and I don't know how they feel about the cannabis thing. And I was like, but they're okay with the alcohol thing? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, oh, but you're doing that. And I wasn't saying it in like a jerky way. I was like, and I was like, let me just reframe something for you. It's legal here. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then welcome them to Colorado.
Wait, so this person was saying that were their neighbors present at this gathering, or that
no, they were next door. They were next.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
This is your house.
Exactly, but this is just part of the growing pains of prohibition ending, right? It's people not quite aligned up with it yet, and the thing to understand is, prohibition is working when cannabis is not exciting to kids anymore.
Right.
It's not. They're like, so it's legal, great. It's not like this great forbidden thing again. It's that forbidden fruit conversation, right? And so, I think that, it doesn't mean that, there are kids now, this is what's funny, right? There are people now working in dispensaries, okay, that were 14 years old when it legalized here. Okay?
Right.
Because you got to be 21. I believe, to work in a dispensary, or maybe it's 18 now. I don't work in one, so I don't. But you know, there are people there who are like, they grew up basically with it being legal. You know, I mean, they weren't born with it legal, but you know, when they were old enough to be like, know what it was and what they were dealing with, they grew up with a legal world, and so it's very weird to them, I think.
But they also grew up watching. They turned 14 when it was legal, but that means that they were like 10, 8, watching the discussion begin of why it should be.
Sure,
you know?
sure. No, and we even had stuff. I mean, we had back in the day, our magazine was we got shit from somebody from Smart Colorado. Smart Colorado is anything but smart, by the way. They're like basically an anti-marijuana group. And this woman was like, she was all upset because she pointed out our magazine and a couple other magazines, right? And she pointed out because we were freely distributed a lot of, you know, grocery store. I mean, not grocery stores, gas stations and convenience stores and stuff, right? What am I? And the statement she said, "What am I supposed to tell my kid when they ask me what a vaporizer is?" And I was like, "Well, first of all, I don't give a shit about your kid, but let's start with like, be a parent, be a freaking parent." So this woman, like, was a perfect example. There's this woman so hated the idea of having to talk to her kid about something that she spent hours upon hours lobbying against it. And it was funny because I was doing a radio show at the time on iCannabis Radio, and I was like, well, let's just time out how much it takes to explain what a vaporizer is. And I did it in about 3 minutes, right? Where I fully explained it, and I took my time and explained, like, you know, all this stuff on the vaporizer. And I was like, you could take that clip and play it for your kid for 3 minutes, as opposed to spending all this time and wasting taxpayer dollars.
True.
You know? But you'd rather fight this process than talk to your kid. You know?
Well, I also hate the notion of when people, because it's the same thing with, you know, the acknowledgement, I'm grateful is existing now. The acknowledgement within school systems at younger ages that there are gay people in the world. Because guess what, people? There are gay children. You're not just gay. I didn't become gay when I was 21, right? It wasn't like I'm 21 now. I'm gay. Like, no, you're gay as a child, and people. What am I supposed to tell my kid about it? I don't care, but you do need to recognize the fact that I'm here. So I'm not going to not have my existence acknowledged because you don't know how to tell your kid that I exist.
It's actually really easy conversation, people, honestly. And everyone's like, what am I supposed to tell the kids? Like, you're putting all this meaning onto this conversation if somebody's gay and somebody's not. Like, I remember telling Mia a long time ago, because she has her uncles, David and Philip. They've been together for longer than Jackie. They've been together, I think, 28 years now, you know, and we call them her uncles. They're two of our best friends out here. And so I just remember saying, well, you know Uncle Philip and David. She's like, yeah. I was like, well, they live together and they're two men and they love each other and they want to spend their lives together. Okay. That's how a kid takes that information. Okay. There's a girl in her class that used to be a boy and is now living as a girl. I'm not going to say her name and all that, but I mean, but we'll just call her Becky. That's not her name. But Becky used to be Bill, not his name either. But now has been Becky, and you know, Becky is in first grade now. But Becky has been Becky since a year before kindergarten, preschool. She was in Jackie's dance class, and she saw her change from Billy to Becky, you know. And so Mia already knows this kid and she sees it. There's another transgender person right down the street from us who was a girl, and she decided to be a boy, but didn't decide until I think it was like sophomore year in high school, and is now graduating.
Just adjust the language. It isn't so much a decision as much as a coming into full understanding of who you. Only because people like to, not you, but people grab onto the idea of a decision. Because if it's a decision, then you could decide to go back.
Well,
as opposed to an internal understanding of who you actually are.
See, I think of it as a choice, though, and I don't mean it like what you're saying. Like, I get what you're saying, and I think of it as and again, this is very cursory understanding of what it's like to be a transgender person, because I'm not. But there is a point, right, where you choose, I am now going to step into who I am. Like, you didn't choose to be transgender. You didn't choose to identify as a female as much as you're choosing to finally be the person that you have been. Does that make sense? Like,
I do understand what you're saying.
like
I do understand how you're phrasing it.
I'm trying to make like to me there's a definitive moment when you now, I mean, it may have been like a progression where you're like, wow, I'm not like other people, and I feel different.
Well, there is a moment where you choose to no longer care what other people.
Well, that's what I mean. That's the choice part. And I think that's really important because I think there's a lot of power in choice, too. Now, you know, I'm not choosing to be a heterosexual male. I am a heterosexual male. I get that part, you know, and just like you're a gay man, but you chose to fully realize or live as who you are. All right. You didn't choose to be gay, but you chose to live as a gay man.
Care what other people's opinions.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. That's very important. I think that's really powerful. And it's really important. I think that, you know, words are very powerful in general. And a decision to me is always interesting. And, you know, some people who've taken other educations like what I've taken, decision is decide. You know what decide means, right? You understand, you know, I don't know. Did you take Latin?
Did I take Latin? No, I didn't take Latin.
Okay. So, but there is a derivative in decide that is the same as homicide, suicide, patricide. Side is the Latin derivative for killing off everything else or killing off. So a decision means you've killed off all other choices. But a choice means you've picked the one that's the most powerful for you, usually, right? And so that's why, to me, language is important on that. It's a weird tangent, but
no, I hear you, but it's a worthwhile conversation. I think there will be people who will hear this, and it will be beneficial for them to think about this.
But yeah, no, I don't think you're. I don't think you choose to identify as another gender. I think you already identify, but you choose to finally fulfill who you are. And I think that's the difference. But
I can, and I'm not trans, so I'm not trying to speak for trans people, but I feel like that would be an acceptable.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, but I do think you're born the way you're born in that sense. You know, are there people who could be swayed by behavior? And people can be swayed by behavior in a lot of things. You know what I mean?
Not sexuality, as far as I'm concerned. I know there are people out there who still believe it, that, you know, someone can, you know, make you get, like, you're either, you know, who you're attracted to and who you're not attracted to. There's nothing that will make me sexually attracted to a woman. I can identify, you know, I can see that, you know, whoever person X is visually alluring, right? Is beautiful,
right?
But I'm not attracted to them.
But you've been with women back in the day. Not for a long time, maybe.
Before I made the choice, I mean, the last time I was 19 or 20 years old or something.
It was in college.
Before, yeah, in college. Before I made that full decision to no longer care what everyone else thought and just be me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but so I think that's interesting because so you're saying you can't because you're not sexually attracted to women, but you were able to have sex with women. So, like,
yeah.
Like I feel like there is that scale. Like I don't know if that scale exists in a way, but like there's like you're super hetero, you're super homosexual, and then there's a whole lot of variances in between for people, right? Like where
there are, but I'm definitely I am fully gay.
Fully gay.
Fully, like way over there to the left.
Okay. I'm fully hetero. I get it. I mean, but you know, I think there's a lot of people who are in the middle, like you know.
Yeah, there are gradients. People in other.
There's
spaces.
a new term called pansexual that I've only heard in the last like year.
Yes.
Can you describe what a pansexual is? To me, it's just somebody who doesn't care and they love everybody, or they can be with
Although
anybody.
that may be more, I think, demisexual, or I think demisexual is that they fall in love with whomever they fall in love. There's many.
I thought that's what pansexual was. What the? Okay, so now
I think it's sort of an openness of attraction. I feel like pansexual and demisexual are cousins in some way.
But how is that not bisexual?
I don't know.
Right.
I will double check because I definitely have. There are people who I know who are very scholarly in this who could give me a flat out better way to answer it.
Or is it just a method of LGBTQ people to confuse heterosexual people? Like,
yes, that's our master plan.
that's your master plan, to always be like, what's going on? I don't know.
I'm actually glad that we had.
I am too.
The more of these conversations need to exist, because we have to create more spaces for people to acknowledge everyone is not like you, whatever the you is. We are in a world full of multiple identities, and as long as people are not murdering or physically harming other people, we need to let people exist in the fullness of their identity.
Absolutely. By the way, Abner put up pansexual, the definition. Pansexual, it says it's an adjective saying not limited in sexual choice with regard to biological sex, gender, or gender identity. Yeah, that's what I thought it meant, actually. But so is, in other words, pansexual saying, well, okay, well, bisexual, you're into men or women, but you're not into transgender? And pansexual is like, well, I'm into that too, or I'm okay with it. You know, like to be, you know what I mean? It's
I'm gonna ask some people. Not that I feel like I have a degree of an understanding, but I don't want to give out a false. So
it's kind of like it's like
think about it.
It's like it's turning into like snow for Eskimos and waves for Hawaiians, and then we have sexual preferences in the LGBTQ community, because we're just binary, right? If you're heterosexual, that's it. So and so it's like there's going to be a different word for every little mini preference, because
but that's a piece of what the world needs to understand, that there's multiple, just like I'm Black, but there's multiple identities inside of that. You're Italian, but every Italian person isn't exactly.
Oh no, there's because you could be Sicilian, which isn't really Italian, but it is, right? And then you're Northern Italian, you're Southern Italian. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like that. It's just.
Listen, because we're coming close on time.
Holy crap, we are.
This conversation. I am beyond grateful that you even introduced this as a piece of the conversation. Mm-hmm. But I do want to make sure that we talk at least for a second about an article you sent me about.
Yes. There's a school
that don't want you to. That they were going to fire people who did take the vaccine.
Yeah. So the basic of the story. Did you read the article? Did you read the article?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you do. I've been talking a lot here. Go for it.
Well, the thing for me, no. The thing for me is I feel like, and again, we've been talking about this for weeks now. One of my frustrations around this moment in time and the vaccine is that I feel like both sides of the aisle have gone crazy, right? And we can have a separate conversation about the fact that we need to move beyond Democrat, Republican, both sides.
We've talked about that before. I definitely,
The biggest problem, right? Where there are people who are angry with people who don't take the vaccine, and people who are angry with people who do take it, and we're now starting to make up all these random arbitrary laws and decisions, and none of it makes sense to me. Like, I'm struggling to understand what is happening in the United States of America, where if a group of people want to take a drug because they feel it benefits them, they should be allowed to do it, and the people who don't want to do that cannot be forced to do that. Both sides are acting insane right now.
Right, and you would say, like, if we were on different sides of the issue, which there's a lot of things we really agree with, you're more on the I'm not ready to take a vaccine, and I've already taken the vaccine, right? But but at the same point, I'm not like, how dare you not take the vaccine, Rob?
And I'm not angry that you took it.
I know, exactly. So, but there are these people. So what you're talking about, just give everybody an idea. If you hadn't heard this story yet, there's a private school, founded in 2019, so still very new school, founded by anti-vax people, and obviously, and they're Trumpists, I believe, from what I read as well. And they started their school as a safe haven for anti-vaxxers to go. And that's fine if you want to be an anti-vax. And I know you're not anti-vaccine, by the way. I know that, just for everybody to be clear. He's just saying he's not ready to take the vaccine right now. And so they founded the school because they wanted to have a safe haven for anti-vaxxers. And okay, fine. So whether you're a vaccination person or anti-vaxxer, great, you have a school now. Then they came out with a statement saying that they're not comfortable having their teachers take the vaccine. And so if you take the vaccine, you will not have a job next year, because
Right.
she's saying that there are women having menstrual issues because they're in the vicinity of somebody who has the vaccine. And so we could talk about the ramifications of, like, first of all, you shouldn't be telling people they can or cannot touch their body. And I always love how Republicans are all about civil liberties and freedoms, and don't let me put a mask on, but I'm not going to let you take this shot, or I'm not going to let you take this birth control, or I'm not going to let you have this procedure or anything. You know, so they have a big issue when you touch your body yourself and do things to it. And so that's amazing already.
But it also applies. It's not. But I'm in agreement with you. Simultaneously, it's also more democratically identified people who also consider themselves, right? I'm a left-leaning person who consider themselves to be very pro-choice. That You can't tell someone what to do with their body, but you better take this vaccine.
Yeah.
You can't have both. You can't have it both ways.
No, you can't. Like if it was up to me, I would like to see more people take the vaccine because of the studies that have come out now, in that it is preventing transmission. We've talked about this before. And I was like, look, if there's no evidence that it's preventing transmission, then taking a vaccine is a selfish thing, right? You're only taking care of yourself, and that's fine. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's, you take care of yourself. It's you could say it's selfish to eat healthy. So that's fine. But it's a purely selfish act if it's only helping you and you could still transmit it. But so far, the preliminary studies are saying that it is helping prevent the transmission of it. I'm not saying that means everybody should go out and get the vaccine because you need to get it. I'm just saying, but that little bit of evidence will hopefully help other people feel like, wow, maybe if I take this vaccine, I can help prevent the transmission of this virus more. But then you go into this other side, and again, it's still your choice. It's your body. Don't put anything in your body you don't want to put into it. But at the same point, to tell somebody that they cannot protect themselves if they choose to is incredible.
None of this makes any sense.
Well, this one is coming from more like QAnon weird conspiracies of what the vaccine's doing. And I think it's amazing and kind of hilarious when we have this proven transmissible virus. It's proven. It's easy to catch for the most part, you know? I mean, we've shut down this country and millions of people have gotten it, even with a shut down country. So, you know, it's something you can absolutely catch. It's not like the flu, blah, blah, blah. I know everybody will say that, but it's not.
But it's not like the flu.
But it's not like the flu. I get that.
It's not the same thing, but it's not.
It is a virus. Correct, right.
Yes.
But
right.
Now you have somebody who they're denying potentially the dangers of this this virus that's easily proven transmissible, and telling him you can't take this vaccine because we think you're catching some weird menstrual cramp thing or menstrual cycle thing from a vaccine that somebody else is having. And that's it, and it's the problem with that side and that argument is it's completely denying any scientific evidence whatsoever. And so you're firing people based on absolutely just a weird internet conspiracy. And again, I mean, this is one school. It's in Florida, okay? So let's, you know, it's already like, okay, that's our weird stepsister, you know, state there that does whatever weird things they choose to do down there. But it is a bizarre situation where you're literally preventing somebody from protecting themselves. It would be like if you go to work somewhere and they're like, you can't wear safety goggles. If you wear safety goggles, you're fired. Because I might catch pink eye from your safety goggle. I don't even know what the argument is really, but I mean, a weird analogy, I guess. But
I
it's
feel like
something.
at the end of the day, for me, it's still built in the fact that what the United States alleges itself to be is a place where there are freedoms of choice, where there are civil liberties, where there's not an overreach of government intrusion, especially with medical decisions for adults, not for children. We make rules for children, right? But for adults. And we're in this moment where we're kind of, there's this mass movement to just, in this instance, ignore that. And you can't just ignore that if you're a country that's supposed to be built around protecting that. So people are retreating to their corners. And and both sides are making. Is it crazy to tell someone that you I'm going to fire you because you got the vaccine? Is crazy, right?
That's crazy.
Whatever that science is based in or non-science. While to me it is equally crazy to hear people overly discuss the safety of it. Like I saw someone on TV talking. Someone was asking a question about does taking the vaccine harm unborn babies, right? If a pregnant woman takes it, will it harm her baby? And this doctor said, no, they don't have to worry about that. I'm like, I'm sorry, how do you know that?
Yeah.
Like it hasn't been, the vaccine hasn't been in existence long enough with women who have given birth for you to effectively say that.
Yeah, you can't definitively say no for that question, right? You could say,
No.
well, so far with this test or with this evidence, this is what we've seen. That's how a scientist or a doctor should be claiming, especially in something as new as this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you hear somebody saying no, that's now you're into the marketing of a vaccine, right? That's what you're into. And I'm not really for that either. But we tend to do a lot of knee-jerk reactions in this country anyway. I mean, like you had the same thing with the Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson vaccine was showing very rare blood clots for, what, 1 in a million? I'm not sure what the number was. It was something like 1 in like a million plus people would get this. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's not a big enough risk that they should have shut it down like they started to do. And they're like, oh, we're shutting it down. And it's like, well, okay. I mean,
But is 2% of people versus 98% of people surviving also not enough to make people feel the need to run out and get the vaccine? They're both based in the notion that it's too small of a percentage of a number.
Yeah, but we do have the biggest thing that is a concern, and they've talked about this, and it is true, is what is this going to mutate into, right? So it's already showing that the newer strains of this virus are more susceptible to getting kids sick, that the kids are getting a little more sick than they were before. And still not at the death rate maybe, but there is a little bit more of that. And so, yeah, we'll have to talk about it. And in fact, it just made me think of something else. We need to talk at some point. I'm going to have my friend Ben Owens on, because he said they actually treated having COVID with mushrooms and actually was able to, push back the symptoms. And I'm not talking, psilocybin mushroom. Everyone's like, mushrooms are very medicinal. We're going to start talking a lot more about that at HC Magazine, because it just like hemp and just like marijuana being, cannabis in general being this amazing product that can do a lot of things, mushrooms are the same way. And so they are medicinal and can have amazing benefits. So we'll have to start talking a little bit more about...
Yes, we should bring up more herbalists into our
We will have to bring in some more herbalists and start talking about that. Mushroom... Actually, psilocybin is legal in Denver now, or decriminalized, actually. A lot of people don't know that. Here in
Denver, I think or in Colorado?
In Denver.
Really? Just in one city?
Well, that can happen. Just like states' laws, cities can do the same thing. I believe Portland just did it as well. I might be wrong on that. But yeah, it's been decriminalized since the last election in Denver for psilocybin. And by the way, for people out there, that's the first step, right? That's how it happened in Colorado for cannabis. Denver decriminalized cannabis. After medicinal already happened, but they decriminalized recreational, possession of cannabis, and before it was even legalized. So it wasn't a thing that the cops could come after you with. And so, like what you're seeing now in New York, well, that's legalization. And so it's kind of a beginning stage, right? And I think we're going to start hearing more and more about mushrooms. At the same point, we need to still talk about cannabis as a medicine. And
I believe that.
Yeah. But mushrooms are fun.
No, what happened? You just froze.
Oh, you just froze on me. I'm fine. I can hear you just fine. But yeah, you're frozen on the camera.
I'm still here.
Yeah, you're still here, man.
Still
you're
moving.
there. You're just frozen in. Yep, you're good. Internet connection is unstable. Well, some reason my internet connection may not be unstable. Hopefully, people can still hear us, although it's loading. But we are over time as well, so maybe we need. Whoa! What just happened? I just lost Rob altogether. All right, guys. Well, we're going to just end this show right now because I think we just lost everybody. And I think until next time, we will we'll come back next week. So thanks very much for joining us. We're not going to come back in after this technical difficulty just because. But I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll have another great conversation next week. Thanks to my co-host Rob, who disappeared on me here. But at least it happened at the end. So until next time, everybody, be safe, be happy, and peace, love, and happiness.